What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 373 of Opinions May Vary. I'm your host, JR. I have my co-host with me, Alex.
Hey.
I'm not going to lie. I almost said I'm your co-host, Jay. I don't know what I'm doing today. Joining us this week, the grand return. We were discussing pre-show. We always do the, especially with returning guests, we do the, it's been this long. You were on this episode, refresher, blah, blah, blah. It has been a good, almost, if not already 4 years, which was shocking. And also a little disappointing, but we're righting the wrong. We're correcting our mistake. Because joining us this week is the incomparable Mr. Rich Woodall.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Rich, thank you so much for coming on again. I was actually telling my wife, I can't remember what it was, earlier last week, because my wife is she does it. She tries. Who are you recording with? And she'll listen to me ramble about who we're recording with and why they're a big deal. And she's like, okay, cool, great, have fun. And I was like, this guy Rich Woodall, he's like nice to a fault. He's like the nicest guy. He's like, it's almost like, it's like, damn it, how are you so nice? But I was doing a little bit of bragging to my wife. But I highly recommend. Last time we spoke with you, Rich, you were on with Craig Rousseau, talking about the Perhaps that was for Perhaps Kickstarter, correct? I believe it was.
It could have been.
I think it was
about right. Yeah,
I don't
4 or
recall
5 years ago. Yeah.
if it was more for Kyra or both.
Right.
It could have been a bit of each.
It could have been a bit of each. Yeah, because 4 years ago we were probably doing our Artist Alley Comics online and doing Kyra, and it might have been picked up by Dark Horse at that point. So that sounds about right. Yeah.
I didn't mention it looking at the blog post from back in June of 2015. Good Lord. I don't see any mention of the... Oh, no, there is a Perhaps. Yep, It was live at the time. So it must have been a combination of both. Anyways,
nice.
We're here because not only has it been too long since we talked with you, Rich, but also because there's more things for us to attempt to pimp out to our audience in hopes that they look at your cool stuff and realize what they might be missing out on. You've created a bunch of things. One of them, Mr. Is it Jonathan Raygun, or is that his father?
I think that is his. Yeah, that might be his father or his uncle. Or,
he's Mr. Regan to you.
Yeah, the genealogy gets a little screwy.
His fuzzies. Yeah. Jonathan will work. Jonathan Regan. Johnny Regan. Yeah. But you've worked on Johnny Raygun, kind of like your baby. You've worked a little bit on Savage Dragon. Looks like there's this one of these new books is going to be Sergeant Werewolf. There's so many things to dive into. I'm not sure where to start. Alex, you probably have a better idea of what we're doing. I'm just dumping it on you.
I'll start with saying, unfortunately, for myself, anyone else who already follows Rich in his Patreon would already know and is already aware. And because Rich's Patreon, they get to be members of that, and then they get their
sneak peeks,
their monthly, parts of in the comics in a digital format. And this is the way Rich decided, well, let's make them physical. Let's put out actual hard copies that people can own, and sort of, anything besides digital. And I want to say, hey, that's a great idea. Everyone's into that. But then looking at your backers, you've got right now at least over 70 backers who are getting the PDFs, which
it's a little weird. It's kind of crazy. A lot of people are international, and they really want the book, but I'm not. I always have I hear horror stories about the international shipping and how it changes between the time you post it to when you actually receive the books and everything. And so it's one of those things where I try to give the international guys at least a PDF that they can get, and then I always tell them after I'm going to have it up. I'll have a web store soon, and I'll have it up in the web store, and I'll do direct sales international. It's just the keeping track of the spreadsheet that you need after a Kickstarter. It's kind of crazy, and then to add the shipping to 15 different countries is kind of hell on top of that.
because my first automatic thought is like it's a chance to own it physically, but
Right.
like it's like, you know, we'll put out the PDF as an extra, as like a side bonus, but like right now that's the biggest seller, which is really cool.
Which tier is that?
That's a $20 one for both comics.
No,
Yeah, that's physical.
That's physical.
That's physical, dog.
What am I looking at? What am I doing wrong?
I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, dude,
You know
73
what it
backers.
I'm looking at the wrong thing.
In
What
the
happened?
in the physical, the $20 pledge.
Oh yeah.
You
That's
get
loaded.
PDFs. Yeah, you get. I try to include PDFs and everything. I figure that's easy to send to everybody, and then you get the book and both books. Yeah, for the $20.
I'm a bad journalist.
Hey, man.
I was starting to wonder. I was like, wow, I need to check my stats. I got so many PDFs. Like, oh, this is weird.
Well, it just shows that your backers are smart because it says best value, and they're going for the best value.
It is the best value, and I will give you a heads up. I really mess up. I'm trying not to make excuses here. As I was setting up this Kickstarter, I wanted to. So when I first started, you know, I had shipping on everything, $5 shipping on everything.
Yep.
And talking with my Electric Black partner, Joe Schmalke, he's like, no, take out the shipping. You don't need shipping. Like, just add it into the cost if you have to. But like, people hate adding that shipping on after, and it's a turnoff and everything. So I started stripping out all the shipping. Well, the night before I went live, my father-in-law had a medical emergency.
Ugh.
And it kind of threw everything up in the air, and I didn't finish my video. If you watch the video, it's really, really horrible. It needed a lot more love, but and I accidentally left shipping on 2 of the tiers. The individual, the $12 Sergeant Werewolf and the $12 Johnny Dragon book. Those both have shipping on them, unfortunately. Even though it says free shipping, Kickstarter set up so it won't let you change that.
Huh.
So I apologize to anybody who gets the singles. I'm planning on adding extra stuff into things that I ship to those people, because I feel really bad about the extra $5.
You're gonna get your money's worth, though. That's what's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know we're here to talk about you and get your ideas and hype what you're doing, but
Sure.
I do want to pitch one brief idea. We had a guy on a couple back in February, and he was making like a D&D supplement kind of little zine guidebook.
Nice.
And we came up with he would offer a coupon to international buyers to then access his store.
Yeah.
And then when they buy it through the store has its automatic shipping for that country.
Right.
That's really clever. I like that.
So like they'd still pay the correct shipping at that exact time, and the coupon from the Kickstarter would get them the purchase for the thing they want.
Oh, that's really cool.
Right?
All right. I like that. I like that.
I hope it's not too late. It might be, but it's maybe next time.
But you know what? I was going to say, I'll do another Kickstarter probably next year at this time, and I'll definitely incorporate. That's really cool. I dig that.
I hope it worked out for him. I
Right.
I might see him this weekend, so we'll see if I could find him then. But
yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, definitely love to know more about that.
So let's chat about because we're talking about the Kickstarter itself. Currently sitting at about the goal set at $8,000. You're currently, as of this recording, at about 65, almost 6,600. So you're pretty much right there, almost there. 23 days to go. So by the time this is posted, it'll probably be about 20 days to go ish. What do we? Because looking here, Savage Dragon / Johnny Raygun and Sergeant Werewolf comic books. What's going on? What are you making? What can people buy?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little backstory. Like Alex said, I run a Patreon page, and I try to do. It doesn't always work out, but I try to do a page a week. And it was really a way for me to, one, pay for some of my wife's medical bills, but two, try to keep going with some of these creator owned things, and just create new content, and it keeps me on my toes, and I get to do fun projects that aren't necessarily picked up by publishers yet or anything. And so the first year I did the Patreon, I did the Sergeant Werewolf book, which for those old Johnny Regan fans is a one panel joke in like Johnny Regan number 3 or 5 maybe. It's it was kind of a silly kind of throwaway thing where Johnny brings his girlfriend to his parents' house and goes to his old room in the basement, and she's looking through his stuff, and pulls out like a DVD that says Sergeant Werewolf on it, and she's like, "This is stupid," and he's like, "That's a classic," and since that point, what, 12, 15 years ago, I've always wanted to do a Sergeant Werewolf comic. And so finally, when I started the Patreon, I thought, this is perfect. I'll write it as it goes. So I don't know where this thing is going when I started. I just knew I was going to keep drawing pages, and I wanted to have fun drawing World War II horror comic. And so it's got crazy things like sewer sharks, which are giant sharks that live in the sewer, but they also have like centipede legs,
like pinchers or something. Yeah.
Oh, it's just horrifying. It's got that. It's got vampires. It's got golems with giant guns and Norse gods, and yeah, it's got a bunch of and of course a werewolf with a helmet and shotguns and machine guns and stuff, just blowing crap up. And so that's the Sergeant Werewolf part of it. And then after I was done with Sergeant Werewolf, I wasn't sure where I wanted to go, what was the next project I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was reminded, hey, you started this Johnny Regan Savage Dragon thing 14 years ago. Maybe you should finish it. And the story behind that is Eric Larsen was nice enough while we were doing Johnny Regan to allow my partner Matt Talbot and I to use Savage Dragon as a team up with Johnny, and we finished 45 of the 50 pages, and then our publisher lost his job, and Matt and I both bought houses at the same time. And so we both had to do freelance work to make money, to pay the bills, and this just kind of got shelved and sat there. And then for the last 14 years, I've been shamed at every convention I go to by people asking me when it's going to be done. And this seemed like a great opportunity to finish it. So it's wrapping up on my Patreon page probably this weekend. The last page will be posted. And then I was thinking, well, I want to do a Kickstarter this year. I did Space Force last year. I want to do something this year. And I thought, oh, well, I can do Sergeant Werewolf. And then I thought, well, if I do Sergeant Werewolf, then I'm going to have to wait another year to do the Johnny Dragon thing. And it's all done and it's wrapped up. And for some reason, it popped in my head, like, why don't I just do both of them at one time? And, I had my wife looked at me like I was crazy. And and I had friends telling me, yeah, do it. And so I just did it. And it was like, what the hell? So now we have Johnny Regan Savage Dragon, which Johnny Regan's kind of a dork and not a great superhero, and his boss hires the Savage Dragon to come in and kind of teach him how to superhero better. So it's almost a buddy cop movie comic thing with lots of guest stars. It's got so I don't know if you guys are familiar with War of the Independents, the Dave Ryan book.
No.
So it was a book that was kind of hyped a little after the Johnny Dragon thing was announced 15 years ago. But he basically got all these independent comic creators to lend him their characters, and he put together like this giant war kind of thing, right? This I don't know. I'm friends with Dave. I don't know if he got this idea at the same time or anything, but we have at least three dozen creator-owned characters kind of cameoed in here, including Madman, Mike Allred's Madman, and Steve Rude's The Moth. There's a couple others that I cannot say their names out loud because while I was friends with the creators and they gave me the yes, you can use these characters, they're like, legally we probably shouldn't, but nobody's gonna see this comic anyway.
So is it one of those things like there's a chance there's more happening with those characters' properties?
Yeah. They in the last 15 years, those characters might have gotten a little bit bigger than what they were when they allowed me to use them.
I want to start cracking jokes, but I don't know if they'd be
right. Yeah. I figure once this thing's printed, there's not a lot they're gonna do. They're not. Hopefully, they're not gonna sue me. I've still got all the emails from them that says, "Yeah, use this. You can use it."
I want to be like, "Hey, man, there's no way Savage Dragon would team up with Negan. Not in a million years."
Right. And this is. I will say that creator might be the creator of one of the characters in here. So
out of the
I think the flavor text, like whether it's either on like the front cover, like is it tacky to put your own quote, but it should say just in quotes, hopefully they're not going to sue me. Rich Woodall.
Right.
Oh man, I hope we can use that someday.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
I not knowing like the what was it called? The War of the Independents, or
yes, yeah.
Not knowing that main storyline, and even just reading some of the cameo appearances that are listed on the Kickstarter, I am recognizing some of the names. Like even if I haven't read a Jack Staff book, I know who Jack Staff is, and I've definitely seen him. And there's 2 trades behind JR in a box of the Fire Breather books.
Yeah.
Because I was a big fan of Phil Hester, still am.
Yeah. Phil is amazing, and so is Andy. Both those guys are great.
Not to brag, I have 2,
but I'm gonna brag.
I have 2 commissions from Steve Rude, and my only link to Mike Allred was that he commented on one of my Steve Rude commissions on Comic Art Fans.
That is kind of awesome. I actually so Mike was really nice. That was kind of outside of Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
That was my gem. Like I'm like, oh my god, Mike's gonna let me use Madman, which was one of the inspirations for Johnny Regan early on. Like the style of comic, I loved what he did with Madman and kind of just did whatever the hell he wanted to, and that was one of the things I wanted to do with Johnny. So when Mike said I could use Madman, I was like beside myself. And a couple years ago, at a Boston convention, I was lucky enough to be on a panel with Mike and Stan Sakai and Jeff Darrow and Terry Moore, and so I'm up there and I'm like, I don't know. So apparently, like Frank Miller or somebody must have dropped out, and they're like, we got a spot here. We just need a chubby kid to sit there and look dumb. And I filled that spot, and but after I got to talk to Mike for a minute, and it was the second time I'd really met him, but I was just like, thank you you probably don't even remember this, like 12 years ago you told me I could use Madman in this comic, and I just happened, I don't sell any of my Johnny Regan art ever. My wife, mostly because my wife won't let me, but every once in a while, really close friends, I will give them a page. And I have my buddy that I worked on Zombie Bomb with, Adam Miller. He's a huge Madman fan, and for his birthday or Christmas, I gave him the page that Madman appears from the Johnny Dragon book, and I had it at the show. And I got Mike to sign it. I went over and talked to him, and he was so nice, and just like there was a really long line, and this is after the panel, and he saw me standing there waiting in line, and he wave me over. He's like, no, you don't, just come back here and talk to me. So I sat with him, talked to him for a minute. I felt really bad because all the people in line are like, yeah, really? But I got him to sign that page for my buddy and everything, and it was really, really cool. I'm such a huge Mike Allred fan, and I don't know where that story was going, but hopefully
Mike Allred's cool.
Well,
he is cool.
He didn't have to comment on my basketball piece, but he did. And like, if you think I didn't screen cap that and send it to my friends and be like,
right.
"Yo, look at this! This is the Mike Allred."
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
There's also it looks like a limited edition cover that's going to be drawn by Charles Paul Wilson III, who
Yes.
we meaning me and our friend Colin, who will go to shows with us sometimes. Sometimes he'll join us on this actual show itself. We chatted with him at length at PAX Unplugged. Yeah,
Nice.
a tabletop convention. Which
Yeah.
like
What was that? One of the games? What game was that?
they're making is it Mouse Guard or Stuff a Legend?
Oh, Mouse
Stuff
Guard.
like- yeah.
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 Okay.
They're making a
Right.
game,
Uh-huh.
which I
Yeah.
think
It looks really cool.
I can't remember. I thought I saw something about it recently, but either way, like apparently Colin's a big fan of that book, and like halfway into our conversation, Colin realized who we were talking to, because I don't know what we call him, CPW the third, Charles Paul.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I call them all those things.
Exactly, CP Dubs. That's what I'm gonna.
Thirds.
Right.
Thirdsies. So, but he had like his portfolio on the table in front of us, and like Colin was just like casually flipping through it while we were talking to him, and then like you saw it like click, and he's like, "Wait,
Wait,
are you the
you're
artist
that
on this
guy.
book?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm the artist." And it was an amazing moment that I got to witness, and he was one of the nicest guys. Like he was one of the highlights of our show, talking to an
I
artist.
was gonna say, yeah. If you think I'm a super nice guy, he is even nicer. He's amazing. He's a really super nice dude.
Have you guys worked
And
together
an
in the
amazing
past?
Artist. What's up?
Have you guys worked together in the past? Have you collaborated
No.
before? Where's the team up coming from where he's going to be doing a cover for you?
No, so we've known each other for a while. You know, it's one of those things where you run into a lot of these guys at conventions, and my art rep, I think, was or is, I'm not sure if it's a present or a past thing, was art repping him, and introduced us at one of the shows. I think it was the Granite Con in Manchester, New Hampshire, and yeah, and he's just an amazing artist, and we've chatted. We'll every once in a while we'll do a Skype thing where you just sit there and you're working and you get a couple artists on a chat, and all of you are just slaving away into the wee hours of the night and just talking about bullshit stuff. But yeah, he's a super nice dude. He's friends with my buddy Joe Schmalke, who again I do the Electric Black with, and Joe had him do either a cover or a pinup for one of the projects that he had done, and like I tried to get Eric Larsen to do a cover for it, and I don't know if you guys saw, but he's doing something for Marvel that they haven't announced yet. They've announced that he's doing something, but I don't think they've announced what book yet. And he's a little behind on Savage Dragon, so he's like, don't really have time. So I started thinking about what other artists would I want for this, and Charles popped in my head, and I was like, oh man, if he's got time, that would be a really cool cover. And I had already had Sean McManus from he did Cinderella and Swamp Thing and what's that other amazing book? Sandman. He worked on like all these these huge properties, and I've been friends with Sean for like 20 years now, and he was nice enough to do a cover for the Sergeant Werewolf book. So yeah, I've been very, very fortunate with getting amazing covers from really, really super talented people.
Silly question. When
Sure.
you draw Savage Dragon, do you have to draw him the way Eric draws him? Like
I wish I could draw him the way Eric draws him.
holding your pencil at that angle.
Right. Right, yeah. I take a hammer and I just smash my hand a couple times, and then I shove a pencil in there and I just kind of move it around on the paper.
I've brought a video of him drawing just to show people, like, look at what this man
Yeah.
does. It's like,
Yeah.
I can't comprehend it. This comes out great. Looks amazing.
It really does. And he inks that way too. Like it's kind of crazy that he gets what he gets. But yeah.
I wonder if he's.
After I was gonna say, after seeing Eric draw, I pay more attention to how people hold their pencils now.
Yeah.
And I find there are a lot of people that hold their pencils very weird.
I wonder if he's aware that people like me, because like last year, my wife came along to New York Comic Con with us because thought she might think it's cool. It's an experience, and I was like, hey,
yeah,
look at the way this guy draws. I was like, this guy, he works at Image. He's done a book that's like 300. I can't remember how many
Practically
issues.
runs Image.
He's like the CFO or something like that. And
right.
And I was like, look, and it's like a legendary Spider-Man artist, like one of the best in the bit. Like, look at the way he draws. And I was like, I can't be the only one who must drag their friends to look at the way Eric Larsen draws. I imagine, I like to think he's used to it at this point. It's like, dude, it's super interesting.
You know what else is amazing? And people are so focused on his hand when he's drawing. He's always got a smile on his face when he's drawing.
Yeah. And he's always chatting.
Oh man, he is one of the he has a bad rep for being super blunt and a little gruff, which he is sometimes, but I think it comes more from him being very honest and you know, kind of no bullshit kind of guy. But he is so nice, and the couple times that I've met him, he's always been very welcoming, and one of the first times I met him, this is oh geez, this is almost 20 years ago, and Matt and I were doing little backups and pinups and stuff for Savage Dragon, and we met him in Chicago, and I had always heard that he would bring a bunch of fans together in the lobby and just talk into the wee hours of the night, and so I was excited for that. I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna get to hang out with Eric all night and just talk about comics and stuff, and it happened, and it was even better than I could have imagined it. I mean, we sat up to like 3-4 in the morning just talking about like Jack Kirby and like Commandi and just weird cool stuff. And yeah, he is such a nice dude, and it was one of those things where 20 feet away, it's the who's who of whoever was hot at that point in comics, and he's not sitting talking with them. He's over chatting with fans and just having a good time talking about comics. He loves the medium, and yeah, I'm so fortunate to have like semi befriended him. He's really, really cool.
In your video, one of the looks like you have a it's fine.
No.
you have like a portfolio book open on your, looks like your art table there, and there's there's a big old double splash of Savage Dragon with a big punch
as he does,
and that is a big fist.
Yes,
there's always been like, we recall hearing about like a competition between Eric and Ryan Otley on who can draw the biggest fist.
yeah that was one of the, so when Eric when we were doing Johnny Raygun for the second issue, because we had done some work with him, Matt and I thought, oh well, let's try to hit up Eric and see if he'll do a cover for us, and he said yes. And then he goes, why don't you guys do a layout for me? And I'm like, oh, right. I'm going to do a layout for you of what I want. So I did. I sketched out the classic giant fist flying at you, you know, kind of guy that I've seen him do a million times. And I was like, dude, just do your giant fist. 'Cause I think just around that time he had Invincible in Savage Dragon, and he did a beautiful splash page with doing the fist thing. And I was like, like the invincible splash. And so he literally took the layout that I did, which was pretty much a copy of anything that he did. And he flipped it and did that with Johnny Regan and threw a star background with some planets and stuff on it. It was awesome. It was great. But yeah, I love that big fist coming at you, and I steal that every time I do a sketch for somebody.
When you have to do a close-up like that, does that affect your attention to anatomy versus, if a hand's gonna be smaller? It's like, well, it's gonna be big and coming at you, and maybe movement, and like, because I know a lot of artists just hate doing hands, and other artists like practice them a lot and like really get into like just practicing drawing hands over and over again. So when it comes to something like that, like, is it nerve-wracking or is it exciting? It's like, oh, I get to work on this hand, or like, oh boy, here comes the hand.
I have never been excited about working on a hand ever. Hands are one of those things that I still struggle with. So yeah, when you're blowing it up that big and it's the main focus, you definitely spend a little more time than you usually would, and you kind of hope and pray that it actually comes out okay and doesn't ruin the entire cover or splash page or whatever you're doing. But yeah, it's and especially that one, like I'm looking at that page now, and the anatomy is really messed up on that, but it's like, it's so foreshortened that I'm just like, I hope nobody notices how horrible it is.
Some people have made careers off of terrible anatomy.
That's very true.
But
as you were saying with going back to Sergeant Werewolf.
Yeah.
When you started it and you said you're basically like, well, this is what I want. This is the story I want to tell every week, or here's where I want to go. Did you have like a page count in mind when you started, or was it a matter of like, I'm going to draw until I'm done?
When I started, I was going to draw until I was done, and I didn't know if that was going to be a 20-page thing or a 100-page thing. I had no idea. Once I got around the 20-page mark, I kind of had an idea of where I wanted to go with everything. And definitely around, because it ended up being 32 pages. So by about halfway, probably 15 pages or so, I knew the rest of the basic story. I didn't necessarily know what was going to happen from page to page 100%, but I had a decent idea. And probably around that halfway point, I was like, I'll try to cap it at 32 pages. And I figured, someday if I ever published it, I've got a bunch of in the book. There's a bunch of bonus content from other artists doing backup stories. I've got 2 short, like 6 to 8 page backup stories, and then just a ton of pinups. So that's going to end up being a 52-page book when it's all said and done.
Was this something that you would script out much ahead of time, or I'm not sure? It's a matter of like when you say, well, I'll figure out when I get there. But like, have there been points where like you've come up with a really good idea and then like regret not writing it down?
All the time. So with Sergeant Werewolf in particular, I did not script anything out ahead of time. In my head, I kind of paced it out like, okay, page 28, we're going to need to set this up. A lot of times I'll write backwards. So I'll start with like if I know this is how I want to end a book, I'll kind of write that in my head and then say, okay, that's on page 32. So on page 31, this needs to happen. On page 30, this needs to happen. And I kind of reverse engineer it. Because a lot of times if I'm left to just have an unlimited number of pages, I will drag that thing out for a long time, because I'll be like, oh, I want him to go down this hallway, and in the hallway there's another werewolf chained up or something. It'll just get out of control, and I'll just meander all over the castle, and he'll never finish anything.
100 pages
So if
later,
I
now we're in Singapore.
right, right, exactly. So yeah, doing the reverse engineering thing works for me. I don't, but I usually don't. I usually don't work that way, the way that I did with Sergeant Werewolf. Usually, I will script everything out. Sometimes, so with Kyra or the Electric Black, with the Electric Black, it's a little different because I'm working with my buddy Joe Schmalke, and we both write and draw the book, which is kind of awesome. But with that, Joe and I are kicking things back and forth constantly, and we know, we've got 32 pages. We want to do this many side stories, and we've got something pretty solid in our head when we start. Whereas with something like Kyra, Craig and I didn't really know. We knew we were doing 10-page a format on Artist Alley Comics, and then once it went to Dark Horse, they trimmed it down to like 8 pages. So we had to edit a bunch of stuff there, but we kind of knew where we wanted to end it, and we had to reverse engineer a little bit of like how many chapters is that going to be of 8-page stories. Yeah, so it's almost like every project's a little bit different depending on what we're doing.
I have like 3 directions I want. I can
shoot door number 2.
Okay, here we go. So, working with Joe on Electric Black, and working with someone else and having to, you're both telling a story. You're negotiating. I'm picturing the meme with Paul Sr. and Paul Jr. from American Chopper, where they're just yelling at each other. It's a full-page spread. It's 5 panels. Shut up.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. Joe and I fight like brothers sometimes. It's we both have the best interest in the book at heart, and sometimes usually it's over little dumb things, but we both know where we want to go with it. It's the how to get there part that usually we bicker about a little bit, but we both have such a love of horror stuff, and it's a matter of like us trying to fit all the cool things that we want to do into the issues that we're doing. But it's a lot of fun working with Joe. Joe's really he knows a lot of horror things, and he builds his week around the Joe Bob Briggs drive-in on Friday nights.
Yeah.
So he's so into it, and I love it. He brings all kinds of really, really cool energy to the book, and we have a blast writing it and drawing it. We're constantly, right now we're in the middle of doing the production on issue 2, and it's cool because he'll send me pages, I'll send him pages, and we feed off of each other's energy. It's a lot of fun.
A friend of ours said, I forgot what channel it was, if it was a website or something, but like they were planning a Joe Bob Briggs like marathon. And and just recently, within the past 2 months, I know the guys that do the last podcast on the left had Joe Bob Briggs as a guest, and that was really fun to listen to.
That's cool. That I loved Joe Bob when he was on, was it the USA channel?
It was that or a TBS maybe. I honestly am not.
Right, yeah. One of those like oddball cable. Yeah, I used to love that. It was Friday or Saturday night, whatever it was. So much fun, and I need to sign up for Shudder so I can watch the new show.
We've talked about it, but I don't know what it is yet. Can you give us a brief summary on the Electric Black?
Oh yeah, sure. So the Electric Black, the Joe has a perfect pitch, and I always screw it up. So I don't want to try to give you Joe's version of the pitch, which is the perfect pitch. My version of it is it's like if Stephen King was writing Doctor Who. So the Electric Black itself is an antique shop that has cursed items in it, and it's run by a demon proprietor, Julius Black, who has been put in charge of the shop, and we're gonna slowly find out whys and who's and all that. But he's got a couple employees, an employee named Jack and an employee named June, and they're always up to just bad things. And in the first issue, this junkie steals a woman's purse and runs into the Electric Black, and it's empty, but he's looking around and there's all these weird items everywhere, and he's attracted to one, and he picks it up, and Julius comes out and introduces himself, and he's like, that's not quite right for you. But he tells him the backstory of that, and this is where our kind of EC Tales from the Crypt kind of love comes in, and we tell a short story about that cursed item, and then we cut back to the shop, and Julius says, this item is a little more what you're looking for, and then he tells the backstory of that. And so the first issue itself is very Tales from the Crypty in that it has short stories, but the long term for the Electric Black, we're kind of more interested in telling the story behind the Crypt Keeper. So we want to tell the story about the people telling the stories. So we're gonna flesh out Julius and June and Jack, and they've got a surprise in the basement named Roy. So yeah, there's gonna be these short stories, but you're gonna see how, like in the second issue, you really find out how they tie into the main story, and how some of these items will be used. In the second issue, June is almost like an arms dealer, and she sells one of the items to a guy in Boston, and the guy's going to do some pretty horrible stuff with it. So yeah, the third issue has no backup stories. It's all straight story about the shop and the individuals inside it. So we're gonna kind of do, again, it's kind of our playground where we can do whatever we want, and we just want to do kind of creepy, scary horror stories with it. So we're having a good time.
You had me at a occult cursed object store.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
So I'm not sure if you just answered this question. Is this the kind of thing where like you have an idea to make it as long as you have ideas, or do you have like a set number of issues?
We know what we want to do for the first year. We don't know how we're gonna market it, if it's gonna be season 1 or in trade 1 or whatever. We've got an idea of how this 4 issues is going to end, and then we have an idea of what we want to do with the next year's issues. But one of the things that when Joe and I were brainstorming about what we wanted to do together, we were talking about we want to do something where we're kind of free to do whatever we want. And we were talking, we both pitched stories back and forth, and I had pitched something about Space Frankenstein. And I've always, like, when I was doing Johnny Regan, I wanted to do a story about Johnny, like, going to the asteroid belt and finding like a random asteroid that had a lab on it, and it had a Frankenstein on it, and like, what's the mystery behind that? So I may not ever do that with Johnny Regan, but it may pop up in the Electric Black. So because the shop itself travels through space and time, we want to jump into the future and we'd like to almost do stories like you would see in heavy metal. So in the first issue, the story that I illustrate is called Rat Ship, and I'm kind of using it as an opportunity to try different styles. And so I did everything in this kind of painted digital style, which is I was not comfortable with at all, but it was something I wanted to try.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second issue, I'm doing a story about possessed nuns in the 1600s in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying and probably not successfully doing a more European brush style for everything. So it's kind of fun where I can just mess around with different styles and stuff and genres, and we'll be in the 16th century in this issue, and then maybe 3 issues from now we'll be in year 3000 in space with a Frankenstein. I don't know.
So I was late to the game. I saw you posting it. I saw you posting about it, and there was posts on how to get it or where you should ask for it. So this is something that is being distributed, so people can ask their local comic shop to order it from Diamond. Is that correct?
Yes, it's in the issue 2 is in Diamond right now, in previews right now.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely go and ask your local comic shop to order it if they didn't order issue 1. It's sold out in Diamond right now.
Mm-hmm.
So they will have to either go to scoutcomics.com and order it from the Scout store, or hopefully maybe we'll get a second printing. It's starting to look like we might, which would be pretty cool. So it's sold out, and a lot of the retailers that we're talking to have told us that they've sold out. So it's moving really well. I've never been on a project where we've had this much attention on it. It's kind of cool.
Good. That's awesome to hear.
Thank you.
With Kickstarters, with someone like myself who is self-deprecating to a fault, and
Sure.
Like this is your second Kickstarter that you've run personally.
Yes.
Looks like you're well on your way to being funded. Knock on wood. Don't want to jinx anything, but you
Right.
got over 3 weeks left.
It's looking good.
Yeah, 3 weeks left, and you got about $1,400 to go.
Yeah, it's looking good.
When you launch a Kickstarter, is there any how do you fight against the feeling of oh God, no one's gonna back this. This is gonna be a monumental failure. What's because obviously you've had a lot of success in the past. You have a book going to second printing. How do you stay out of that mentality?
I'm a very positive person in general. I am scared to death of Kickstarter. Because it's like then you start going, oh well, what if my friends think this book is crap and they don't back it? And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I did a double Kickstarter and gave people the option to either get Sergeant Werewolf or Johnny Raygun. If you don't like one, you can hopefully you'll like the other one. But yeah, Joe again, mentored me through a lot of Kickstarter stuff and anxiety, because he's done several Kickstarters and they've always been fully funded plus some. So he's kind of a pro at that, and I always talk to him about it, and he's always very positive about, oh yeah, you should set this goal for this reason, and you'll probably make this much over it, and etc. And I'm trusting that he knows what he's talking about, and so far he has not steered me wrong. He's always been right on and given me incredible ideas to kind of run with. But yeah, it's definitely scary. I'm also one of these spreadsheet numbers guys. So I looked back at the Space Force Kickstarter and I saw, oh well, this many people got PDFs and this many people donated at the $20 or backed at the $20 range. So I started doing some kind of formula math stuff to see what I thought. Space Force was kind of a niche thing that Trump is so polarizing that I think I lost a lot of people just because of what it was about. But I was kind of hoping, like, there were 200 something backers on Space Force, and I thought, I think this might get closer to 250 when it's all said and done, maybe. So I started doing math and what do I need for printing costs and everything, and that's kind of how I set my goal and stuff. So it's definitely a little bit stressful, but it was nice that I had a very good first and second day. So that gave me a little confidence, and I haven't had to babysit it too much, and I try not to be like it probably anytime somebody does a Kickstarter, they're going to be posting like 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to annoy the crap out of people. Hey, look at that Kickstarter that you already backed 3 days ago.
Right.
Here I am talking about it again. Yeah, so I'm trying to walk that line of not being annoying and everything, but it's going really well so far, and I'm excited that 148 people have jumped on board.
The knowledge that the art pretty much is done has to help people's confidence, because that's usually where. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
Because that's usually where a lot of them stall out, or that's where people start to complain, because they say, well, I have to finish it, or like when we started it, we got the first 5 pages out of 100, and then people realize it's 3 years later and nothing's happening. But like you don't have that problem.
No, and that's on purpose, because I know me, and the way that the next shiny object that gets waved in front of my face distracts me. I know that I need to have these things almost print ready. Like the main stories are done. Some like production-y things and design-y things that need to be done. There's a couple pages for the backup stories that need to be colored, but probably about, I would say, from the 2 books, probably about 90% of those 2 books are done and in the can and ready to go. So it's that last 10% that I need to either color or letter or touch up or whatever. But yeah, I know myself, and I know that if I have to draw everything by the time it's all done, it'll be 2 years later, and all that money will be gone, and I'll be sitting there going, I got to come up with $6,000 to get this thing printed now.
Can you do a Kickstarter for a Kickstarter?
I'm sure there's got to be guys out there that have done that.
They just put it under creative names.
They'll do an Indiegogo to supply their Kickstarter.
Funny thing.
Yeah.
One of those is happening.
That's kind of a real thing, but we won't.
It definitely is a real thing.
Get into that.
Yeah, I've had some debates with other artists about it. Like, is that a good way to go? And I've heard some very valid points that Indiegogo attracts a very different crowd. So if you want to do that, more power to you. But that's definitely not my thing.
Back to Sergeant Werewolf.
Yeah.
I'm torn between wondering if the topic came from like, this is something ridiculous that I want to make, and this is the correct setting for it, or do you have a background of like you like World War II history? I remember earlier, like, did you watch many like movies or settings to get down uniforms or weapons or anything?
Yeah, it's both, really. I do like World War II a lot. I listen to I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Hardcore History podcast. It's a podcast by this guy Dan Carlin, who will tell you right up front, I am not a historian. I am a fan of history, and it's great. The way that he presents information is really, really neat and engaging. and he's done a couple of World War II podcasts and World War One podcasts, and it all fascinates me. And I've got a ton of World War II art history books and just normal history books, and I'm a big fan of Sergeant Rock, and all the like weird war, the DC weird war stuff. Like the weapons I tried to be semi-accurate with, but at the same time, I'm not great at drawing weapons. So I kind of, half-assed threw some of that stuff together. But yeah, with the costumes and stuff, I tried to be semi-accurate. And then as it went on, it probably just kind of fell apart. Because I end up trying to do cool versus practical,
right,
or technically accurate. I try to keep the heart of truth in there, but give myself room to play around a little bit.
This is a bad comparison, but it's like people argue like that MMA is better than pro wrestling.
Right.
It's like
right.
I could watch a thing that's designed to be entertaining, or I can watch two guys walk in a circle for a half hour,
right,
or one guy pulls guard for 20 minutes. It's like, I guess this is fun to watch, or I could watch dudes throw themselves off top ropes.
Right, yeah, because you know crazy things are going to happen.
So I get that. It's like you could make it look super realistic, but like that's only going to be, so entertaining to such an extent where it's like, let's turn the dial a bit.
Right, and it's, the subject matter lends itself to just being absolutely ridiculous, and that's why. So in the first, I take that back. The very first page, it has ridiculousness on it, but on the second page, I tried to establish kind of a normal group of commandos, and I wanted it to kind of start off like, oh, this is your normal thing, and then it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder as it goes. But yeah, it's one of those things. If you don't set that baseline of normality, then it's just kind of being weird for weird's sake, I guess. I don't know.
And if you design your own Raygun, then who cares if it's accurate? So it's your own design.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is ridiculous for ridiculous sake.
No one's gonna look at Johnny's Regan and be like, "That's not accurate."
No, and his hair too is like oh, that's not even possible to do whatever that thing is on his head.
Do you have something?
I was gonna start to we're getting a little low on time.
Okay.
But if you got a question, let's hit it.
How did you come up with let's see, was it difficult to find a reasonable amount of conflict to put Savage Dragon and Johnny Raygun in the same book? When you're like, do you get the permission to choose the character? Did you already have an idea for them? You said like it's time for Dragon to kind of show Johnny the ropes. But like as you go, like how far ahead did you know how to make them interact?
Yeah, that one. So that I worked on with my Johnny Regan partner Matt Talbot, and when the way the whole thing kind of came about was a Savage Dragon fan, Craig Olson, had met us in like Philadelphia or Boston or Baltimore or something, and he had commissioned Matt and I to do a Johnny Regan Savage Dragon pinup because, as a fan of both books, he knew that they both shared a Dimension X, and like everybody else does, right? And so we did the pinup, and Craig posted it on the old image message boards, and said, "Oh, wouldn't this be great? This would be a really cool team up." And Eric just commented, "Go for it." And then Matt and I flipped out, like, "Oh my god!" So we contacted Eric and said, "Were you serious? Like, we can, we can do this?" And he's like, "Yeah, just send me a script or concept, pitch, whatever." And the first concept we sent him, he totally rejected. And it was one of those things where I'm really glad he did, because knowing now that it took 15 years to make this book, it was a less accessible type story for the ages. Like if you were reading Savage Dragon at that time, and Johnny Regan at that time, then it would have flowed right into that story. Because we originally, the pitch was a bad guy from Johnny's universe goes over to Savage Dragon's universe and decides that that world is easier to conquer than the Raygun world, and for whatever reason decides to switch Johnny and Dragon's brains. So they're each stuck in the other universe as the other person, and so Johnny Regan automatically has a wife, a hot wife, and a kid and everything, and Dragon is a loser who has nothing. And Eric rejected that one. He didn't like that concept, and so we had to kind of go back to the drawing board. And so we came up with this other thing, but it was, again, maybe it's lazy writing, or maybe it's just fanboy writing, but we were just constantly thinking, like, how can we just want to have a giant fight. We just want, we want to have pages and pages and pages of them fighting just dumb characters. And we were very successful in doing that. The main villain in the Johnny Regan Savage Dragon team up is one of Johnny's villains, who in probably the first issue that we put out appears. He's an electric villain who Johnny runs into at a fast food restaurant, and that fast food restaurant has it's called It Might Be Chicken, and instead of like cooking the food, they had these like molecular DNA altering things, and they would just have like slabs of protein, right? And they would aim this little wand at it, and it would be like, oh, it's chicken, oh, it's beef, oh, it's whatever. And so the way Johnny defeats that guy is he uses the flavor changer thing, and he points it at him, and he turns his hands to chicken. And he's an electric villain, so anytime he uses his powers, it smells like chicken is frying. And so anyway, so that character, we brought him back for this, and we wanted him to try to find a way to get revenge on Johnny. And the way he does it is he goes to a cursed antique shop, and he finds a Coke can that has a magical monkey in it, and it's kind of our version of Mxyzptlk, where it's the chimp from the fifth dimension, and he grants Maxwell Adam 3 wishes, and the whole time you're like, just wish for your hands to be not chicken. You're just waiting for it. You're waiting for it. And he's too greedy, and he wants revenge too much for that to be his first 2 wishes. So that's how the story builds out. It's all about Max trying to get revenge on Johnny, while Dragon is trying to teach him to be a better superhero.
Which that's not an out of character concept, because I believe from my memory, within the first 5 issues, I think it was the main series. Yeah. Because there was a 4-issue mini of Savage Dragon before he got his ongoing. And I think like somewhere by issue 5, Bedrock Badrock shows up. I'm saying both the names because I don't know which one he is anymore, because Rob Liefeld couldn't get a copyright on one of them.
Right.
And like, so Bedrock Badrock shows up and just punches Savage Dragon out of nowhere. And he's like, what are you doing? And there's a very short fight. And he's like, oh, you're a new tough guy. I'm seeing if you're tough. And he's like, we just caused property damage, you idiot. And we could have hurt people. Go home. Yep. And he's like, oh, exactly. I guess you're tough. Yeah. It's like, this is stupid. Why would you do this? And I'm like, thanks, Eric.
Nice.
Yeah. Eric definitely he kind of brought it back to reality.
Even though it's a giant green dude with a fin on his head.
Right, exactly.
Rich, as we wrap up here, we have we've mentioned it a couple times, but we talked briefly about the Patreon. We like to give people, a moment or two to kind of hype themselves up. So obviously there's the Kickstarter going. If someone else wanted to find the rest of Rich Woodall's work, what would be the easiest way for them to do so?
Yeah, follow me on Facebook or the Twitters. I think my Twitter thing is at John Regan or at Johnny Regan. I don't use the Twitters too much, so Facebook is definitely the place to be. I'm in the middle of working on a personal website which has the longest URL in history. It's projectpandoraentertainment.com. Right now it just has kind of a launch page on it, but I'm hoping to have a store up soon. The Patreon page is always available. If you go to Patreon and you search for Rich Woodall or Johnny Regan or maybe even Savage Dragon, it should pop up. And then of course the Kickstarter. If you go to Kickstarter and search Savage Dragon, Johnny Regan, or Sergeant Werewolf, it'll definitely pop up. Yeah, that's and the Electric Black. Jump into previews. Go to your local comic shops. Demand that they order it now, so we have good numbers for issue 2.
And if any listeners like this episode, you could catch Rich's first appearance. That was on episode 142 from December of 2014, and also 169 co-guesting.
Co-guesting?
Oh, we had Joe on that one too, with Craig Rousseau.
Joe was in the one with Craig too?
Because we would meet Rich at conventions, and the four of us, you, me, Joe, and Colin, were all fighting over which of us is Rich's best friend now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why we invited them to come on, and Colin thought we were kidding.
That's awesome.
This is what you mean to us, right?
Oh, you guys are just too nice to me.
What can we say? What can we say? This was a lot of fun. Rich, I almost thought, I was like, wait, is his name Rich? Guess I'm not his best friend.
We said a lot of names just now.
We did say a lot of names. Congratulations on the what we're hoping is the eventual success of the Savage Dragon, Johnny Regan, and Sergeant Werewolf comic book Kickstarter. If you haven't already backed it, go and throw some money Rich's way so this book can hit the presses, and get into your hands. Hopefully, Rich, it's been too long since we've seen you in person. Hopefully, we'll be able to bump into you at a convention sometime this summer. And best of luck, continued luck on all the Patreons and on all the books and all that stuff. This was a lot of fun, man. Thanks again.
Oh, thank you guys. I really appreciate it, and I always have fun coming on. We got to do another one where I just come on. We can just talk about somebody else's comics.
Yeah, we're okay with that. We're 100% okay with that. We're always looking for excuses to talk about comics. So if it's with another comic creator who knows more shit than us, that's even better.
Oh, well, I don't know if I'll know more shit than you, but I'll throw my 2 cents in there.
Excellent.
I wish some good luck and hope we hit some stretch goals so we could get some stickers and some more patches.
Yeah.
Because the first 48 got patches.
What?
Yeah.
And I saw, I think it was within the last year, Richard posted like, hey, who do we know that's a good patch maker?
Yes.
And a few options came up, and I was like, what's planned?
Patches?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited about patches.
Excellent. Go throw money at it so everyone can get patches and stretch goals and books and all that amazing stuff. Rich, thanks again. This was great. Hopefully we'll see you soon. So until next time, I have been JR.
I'm Alex.
And I think I'm Rich.
He thinks he is. I can't dispute that.
I'm pretty sure.
And this has been episode 373 of Opinions May Vary.